All right, Dean Stott, you are well known for your experience in the SBS, but also in the private sector. But I want to focus on something a little bit different. I want to focus on the self-motivation piece and what people might be able to pull from your experiences when they're trying to establish more self-discipline, more self-motivation in their life. Because we all have those friends, or we are those people, or we know those people that, they have to go to a personal trainer 3 times a week because they need the appointment, they need the accountability, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there's a lot of people that do that, say, man, I just can't do it unless I have that. I need the self-motivation. I need the self-discipline. And one of the things I appreciate about the SBS and the SAS is the style of training is much more about, hey, like, you've got the goods. We're not going to scream and we're not going to yell at you. You just got to get your way through this. So it's pure self-motivation.
Yeah, it's all self-motivation. And the reason for that is the fact that you may be on your own behind enemy lines. You don't have an instructor shouting it or giving it the motivation. So that's why we get tested on that self-motivation. But for me, it's like you have to have a motivation. What is it you want to do? Do you want to be a better father? Do you want to be fitter? Do you want to be more present for your family? And so for me, it's like, what is the objective? So first you need to ask yourself, what is the objective? What is it I want to do? And why do I want to do it? Because if you don't have that motivation or that drive, when it gets hard, you'll just take the easy route out. And so you have to have something that's attractive to you or to other people for that. And for me, I think what's really changed in society now, and as we're seeing with like YouTube and Instagram, there's subject matter experts out there. There's so much information out there that it's accessible to us. And so find out what it is you want to do, and then find out from those subject matter experts, whether it's podcasts, whether it's videos or whatever, because actually that can save you a hell of a lot of time. That's probably 75% of the work done. These people, from what their experiences, and like I said, everyone's unique anyway, so their experience might be slightly different from yours, but there's a lot of information that you can use. So I would say, find out from them what it is you want to do, and then formulate a plan. I always like to have a plan. If I go into the gym and I don't have a plan, I just end up just pottering around. But whereas if I know what I've got to do when I go in, I'm like, right, it's very regimented. I like to be regimented and know what I'm going to do. And so then from that information, you then formulate your plan. And then you have to there's an element of, you have to be, with self-motivated, you also have to have a bit of discipline. You have to have some sort of accountability, which you touched on before. Some people like to go to PTs because there's accountability there. But when you're on your own, you need to be accountable for yourself. And, have that discipline, say, right, today I need to do this amount of training. But every day is different. We have curveballs and something might factor that training. But make sure you have got it in by the end of the day. Because for me is that you need to be in that right mindset. I always say, for example, when I did my world record bike ride, I made sure that I hit my target that I needed to do for the end of the day. So I was in the right headspace the next morning setting off, because if you're 10 kilometers behind that day, you say, right, I'm going to catch that up tomorrow. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You may have another bad day and you're 20 to 30 kilometers behind, or you've got a training plan and you missed 2 days now and not 1 day. So I always say, get it in when you can, because then when you go to bed that night, that helps you know that you are where you're supposed to be and you are, in line with that plan.
After today's video, I popped a link down below for Thrive Market. Now that is an online membership-based grocery store, and that is a 30% off discount link and a $60 free gift when you use that special link down below. So think about being able to walk into a grocery store and immediately narrow down what you want. You want sugar-free, you want high protein, you want this. You can use these filters and shop for whatever you want. Plus, I also have my own signature products that I've created with Thrive Market. I've created some low-carb keto truffles that are sweetened with allulose. I've created nut butters that are sweetened with allulose, so like these dessert butters. I've linked out to them down below as well. But you can also just go to Thrive Market and you can search for like Thomas DeLauer nut butters or Thomas DeLauer low-carb truffles, whatever. Anyhow, that link down below saves you 30% off your entire first grocery order and a free $60 gift. So if you're shopping, you're getting groceries for yourself, you've got to check them out. And they've been a big supporter of this channel for over half a decade. So thank you to them and thank you to you.
And know your strengths and know your weaknesses. Some people are good runners, but poor on upper body. I'm guilty of this myself. I know I'm good at pull-ups. I know I'm good at press-ups. So I tend to avoid probably some of the other exercises, which is going to hurt. But, push yourself, identify what your strengths are. And if you know your strengths are this, then let's start working on those weaknesses. And then the final thing I would say is you have to believe. With everyone, you have to believe. If you can't believe in yourself, then how are you going to expect others to believe in you? It has to be a self-belief. My career actually, and my time in since the military, is all been about proving people wrong. My father told me I'd last 2 minutes in the military. He didn't believe I was going to do it, and there's no point in me arguing with that person. You can argue with someone to the blue in the face. The best course of action was action itself. And so you need to believe regardless what everyone else says. And when they see changes in you, then they're going to start believing you as well.
And I think if you apply that just to everyday life, I think that's something that people don't believe that they can make a change that they need to change, or they need to make. They don't believe that they can accomplish a task they need to accomplish. And I think belief sometimes gets swept under the rug as this kind of woo-woo-y, like weird thing that's like, okay, believe, yeah, But that is a very, very real thing. You don't survive without a certain level of belief. If you didn't believe that you could make it through the day, you wouldn't make it through the day, right? It's you're going to do it. It's just reframing that belief system.
Yeah, it's reframing that belief system. And I think the word failure, a lot of people are embarrassed about failure. And I don't like the word failure. I don't think there should be a word failure. I think you should just call it experience. It's like, I didn't fail, I had an experience. But what did I learn from that experience? I see people where they do something and they had that experience, but then they went on and did the same thing. They didn't learn from that experience. So for me, is everyone will fail, everyone will have an experience, but what did you learn from that? And take that forward. And if you do it again, then you haven't learned from that. So I think a lot of people in society today are scared of failing. What will people say about me? And so social media is a great tool, but also is a negative tool for people. People see other people doing them things. And I always say, don't look at what they're doing. You're unique. When I did my bike ride, everyone's like, you need to see this guy, you need to see this guy. And I'm like, I don't, they're not me. I know my body. So forget about that white noise, as I call it, and just focus on and believe. And don't look for the end target. Just look what's in front of you. We call it the 1 yard. For example, when I did my bike ride, it was 14,000 miles. If you looked at 14,000 miles, it would just consume you. You wouldn't even get on the flight. But for me, I'd sort of broke it down into countries. I broke it into days and I broke it into stages. I did four rides a day. So for me, I was just doing 4 training sessions a day. I wasn't doing a world record. And before I knew it, I'd done a day, I'd done a week, a country, and you just start chipping it off. So yes, you have a plan, but don't look towards the end. It's like special forces selection. When I start day 1, I'm not looking at 6 months later getting my bearing belt. I'm like, what do I need to do today to be here tomorrow? And then you start seeing those changes. So it's just chipping away at the iceberg. But you have to believe in yourself. And yes, there's going to be hard days, and it's very easy to say, right, I'm not going to do it. But that's where your motivation kicks in. That's why your motivation has to be so powerful that you're not going to stop. When I did my bike ride, we raised $1.4 million for 11 charities. And I know that for one of those charities, it was called Place to Be, the money they got enabled 14,000 children at school to speak to psychologists. And so I just turned that was my motivation for that. So you have to have a motivator, because when it does get hard, and it will get hard, you need to have something that's so powerful that you're going to keep going.
It's your true north. It's the one thing I've always kind of divided it into 2 categories like that. There's the true north. There's the piece that this is what you're doing, hell or high water. There's just no denying it. This is just what you want, and that's the goal. Because I have a mixed emotions with goals, because goals can be so fluid, and they can also just mess with your head. But if you really know wholeheartedly this is your true north goal, this is what you need to be. I need to be healthy so that my kids and my family have me. I need to, you truly sincerely believe that. You need to really dig deep and believe that. You need to really believe it. If you really feel my family needs me around, I need to get healthy, I need to be able-bodied to do this. Okay, if you sincerely believe that, then that doesn't change. That doesn't become a goal. That becomes your true north. That is that. Yeah. And then it comes down to, just like you said, it's 1 foot in front of the other. And like literally when I was, at the time, I was the youngest person to backpack the John Muir Trail.
Wow.
I was 11 at that time, and since then, I think a 7-year-old's done it. So they smoked me. But the point is, and I ended up doing it twice, back-to-back years, and that's like 226 miles from you're backpacking from Yosemite down to Mount Whitney, and yeah, it was an amazing experience. But people always ask me, as a kid, like, how did you do that? Well, first of all, as a kid, you're not thinking about the future. Like, it literally came down to, and I gave this response so often, is 1 foot in front of the other. It's not that freaking hard. Like, it really wasn't. It wasn't. When you look at it at the big scale, just like your bike ride, I mean, it's hard. It's a lot of miles. It's a lot of ground, but it really is literally 1 foot in front of the other. Yeah. And I think that's where that's where they screw themselves the most. I think they really do think so much big picture. Yeah. That they can't live in the present and think, this is what it feels like right now. This is what it hurts right now. Yeah. Okay. It doesn't hurt 5 seconds from now. We don't know what's happening 5 seconds from now. And it's, I see that time and time and time again with, I don't want to start this business, or I don't want to do this because it's going to hurt because of this. We don't know.
I used to have a great quote for my students when I was on the commando course, and it was, anticipation is worse than participation. Because you're actually thinking about all these things that can go wrong. And actually, when you actually then do it, you then look back and think, that actually wasn't that bad. Yeah. You're always thinking about the negatives, but actually when you then dig in and you do it, you look back and think, that wasn't actually that bad. And everyone has good days and bad days. When I did my bike ride, I may have a bad day, but that day's gone. I don't think that I'm never going to do that again. I just look forward. So that's probably one thing I'd say to people, whatever you're doing, the anticipation is probably because what you're seeing on social media, what you're hearing from other people. But actually, when you participate and then you do it and then really commit, you look back and think it's not bad. Like me with Special Forces selection, now looking back, I was like, yeah, it's not that bad. I had guys, when I passed, the guys were coming to me like, what's it like? I said, oh yeah, it's all right. But because your mind is you have a short-term memory. You forget those days when you're in pain, and you think about the positive days. But it was easy for me to say, yeah, it's fine because I'd already passed. But for them, it was a different picture. So, yeah, if you can see through that anticipation and then just commit, you'll surprise yourself.
Can you imagine a life where you were dictated by pain avoidance constantly? No. Yeah, I think that is. Personally, I think that's one of the biggest killers of self-motivation and drive is the fear avoidance, the pain avoidance, which can be roped together as one. It's like you could be in the middle of our workout that we did this morning. We did, just for context for people listening, we did like descending ladders and then a 21-15-9 of like deadlifts and burpees, which means that they're short workouts, but they're designs that you can maintain intensity, right? You're with a descending ladder where you start with higher reps and then so a block of just explaining, you obviously did it, so you're like, don't even talk about it. But 21 deadlifts, 21 burpees, 15 deadlifts, 15 burpees, 9 deadlifts, 9 burpees. And the reason that those descending ladders are kind of set like that is to maintain intensity and maintain motivation, right? Yeah. Because they're scaled at a way where you're not anticipating so much. Because if it was reversed in an ascending ladder where we went 9, 15, 21, A, it would be physiologically more difficult, but B, you have these anticipatory response that would end up really killing you on those 21 if they were ending on the 21. And it plays into the psychology of this, like how an athlete might look at things. It's like as you're getting further and further into a workout, your threshold for that pain might go down a little bit, right? Yeah. So you give yourself a little bit of amnesty by decreasing the number of reps. But if you were to consistently sit there, training through that, thinking about what is coming next, you would completely shoot yourself in the foot. Yeah. Making it so that this is what it feels like right now. This is what this rep feels like right now. I'm not going to think about the next set until I'm there.
Yeah, exactly. And the great thing about the descending ladder, you heard the phrase "eat the frog." Have you heard that?
Oh, you eat the frog first, right?
Eat the frog first. Yeah, so you're doing that 21 first, and you know that I'm never going to do 21 again on this exercise. So that's the great thing about the descending ladder. But yeah, it's almost about, what I find is trying to just blank out. I daydream a lot. Yeah. And obviously I'm counting, but I try not to. And it's hard because you have you have voices in your head like, this is hurting already, and you're not even 25% of the way through it. But it's like, okay, just keep going. And I'm like, well, I've done this before, or I've done something similar in the past. And so for me, it's all about trying to just switch off and daydream. But I've also like quite competitive, because I was watching you and I thought that's what sort of distracted me from the pain. Is that right? I need to keep up with yourself. So that's the good thing about, some of the exercise as well. And sometimes it might be easier if you're training with someone else rather than on your own, but you have to get yourself out of your comfort zones. And I think that's what people struggle with. People like to be in their comfort zones. I touched on it before. I like to work certain muscle groups that I know that I'm strong at, and I'll probably avoid the ones that are gonna hurt the next day. But you have to do it.
How did you learn to silence that inner radio voice that might be telling you can't, or telling you, I don't want to say to quit, but just the negative self-talk that sometimes can play in your head? And did you have any tactics to silence that in the moment?
I think for me, as a young age, it was almost like in the ego thing. I didn't want to sort of let my friends down, or didn't want to let them know that I couldn't do it. So that was my sort of motivator. And then obviously when I then went Tier 1 Special Forces, it was like, well, you've done things like this before. And so I sort of would relate to that. But it's hard, for me, it's not so much, it's not the physical is hard, and the mental is having the physical and mental is good. Is being able to switch off is quite difficult. So for me, I'd sort of daydream. When I did my bike ride, for example, I'll use that as an example. 14,000 miles. I know that other cyclists who do challenges, they'll have a support team who plan the whole operation, the logistics and everything else. Me and my wife did that. So actually, when I was on the bike, I was thinking about the project. I was thinking about the next phase, stage 2, stage 3, and so that was keeping me busy, and that was keeping me distracted. So I have a way of being able to really just switch off. I don't know how I do it. I think I was a daydreamer as a young kid, and I still am a daydreamer now.
Would you find, almost the opposite of that to be true in the case of, say, an operation? Do you get in a flow state, like when you're in the heat of it?
Yeah.
Or are you one of these where I have to kind of compartmentalize, maybe turn off a little bit, and default to my training that I know I'm going to be able to do this job right?
Yeah, you default to the training. That's why what we do, we repeat all the time, because then when it comes to the day of the race, or in the battle, it just is all muscle memory. But when you're, that's actually at the target. But if you're then you're marching in 30 miles, that's a long way to march in. But you're thinking about other things. You're thinking, are we moving tactically? There's so many distractions in the special forces, which you probably don't get in the gym arena. Is the fact that you're thinking about so many things and so many things at play that actually, before you know it, you've already done the march. And so they're things that really helped me, is that I wasn't really thinking about what I was doing or the distance that we had to cover. It was about other factors that are in play. Do we have the Spectre gunship? Are the guys moving tactically? Are we doing navigational checks? Those things are real good distractions that sort of take you away from the physical stuff. And that's probably what you can struggle with in the gym, because if it gets hard, I'll just get off the machine and I'll go have a shower. You have an out. We get in positions where there is no out. And going back to the bike ride, I remember we raised £70,000 at a charity event, and £50,000 was to secure the hotel for the fundraiser we're going to do when I finished the challenge. So before I'd even gone on the challenge, we had a committee of teams working on the welcome back party. So you can imagine that. I haven't even set off yet, and we're already planning the event when we get back. And Amanda, who's a good friend of mine, she did the event, she organized the event, and she used to say to me, she goes, "What's the contingency?" And I never used to answer her. But obviously for her, she needed to know if there was a contingency, because she's planning this huge event. And Alana, my wife, would say, well, our contingency is we go to Dean's funeral. But when I actually finished the challenge, I sat down with her and I said, look, Amanda, the reason I never told you or talked about a contingency, because if it got hard on that challenge, and it got really difficult, you would naturally, and you knew there was a contingency, you naturally would take that route. And so for me, I had no contingencies. I had to finish the challenge. And so that's what helped me. Whereas some people would naturally take the easy route out. So if you set yourself a challenge and you know there is no out, you will just keep going forward.
As you're saying this, I'm trying to think of how you can make it so there's no out in a civilian.
It's hard in a civilian world, yeah.
Posh world, right? I really think, okay, you need to lose this weight because your life depends on it.
Yeah.
Well, clearly telling someone that their life depends on it when it comes down to weight loss doesn't always work.
No.
Because it's fear avoidance, pain avoidance. I mean, you go to the gym, it's easy to get distracted. It's easy to quit. And I'm not saying you need to put yourself in a place where you can't quit, but being able to frame it that way, and I think it starts young with the framing and how probably your value system and how you value something, how much you value something.
Yeah.
If someone else is telling you need to be X weight to be healthy, maybe the stock that you hold in that isn't the same as what that other person says, right?
Yeah.
And it's like your value assignment to that, right? We talk about value assignment a lot, and that's just what someone sees as a value to them versus what's a value to you. And it's just plain and simple. My wife has a different value assignment to certain things than I might have to certain things. So it might affect her significantly more or less than it affects me, right? True, yeah. And my wife is a very healthy person, but I'm obviously quite obsessed with health and fitness. So my value assignment with health and fitness is so high. Whereas for her, if she skips a workout, she's fine, I'll walk a little extra tomorrow. It's really no big deal. For me, it's like, oh gosh, okay.
Yeah.
So how do you, how you get someone to do that? And you have to probably find that value. Like where do you assign value so that you can hold some heavy stock in that, so that when you do try to make a change, you do try to do something that you need to be motivated for, you're motivated for it in a way that you don't feel like you have an out because it's that important to you.
Yeah, I think your motivation has to be that powerful that you don't have an out. There are plenty of outs if you want it, but your motivation or your purpose has to be so powerful that you stick to it. And I think it's very difficult in the civilian world. Our scenarios are very different. There is no out. You're dropped in. I mean, the only way out is you have to get back. So it is difficult. And I do sympathize with the civilian world with that. It's very easy to take the easy route. People want to train. It's like, well, I might take this supplement. I get a lot of messages from young kids and they're like, I want to be in the special forces. What do I need to do? And I'm like, well, it's very difficult. It's not just one pill that you need to take. The way that I'm built now is from, I share photos with them when I was 17 and 18. And they're like, well, you look like me. Like, oh, yeah, exactly. I look like you. You don't come in like this. It's years of training and experience that get you to this. And so for me, I always ask them, what is their motivation? Why do you want to be in the special forces? And, and I get all sorts of answers. Some of them are on the button, and then some of them I'm like, I think you need to look at your motivation more, as someone else. You need to have a purpose or some, a bigger motivator. And then I maybe direct them to other units first and said, why don't you do this first? And it's almost like a stepping stone. Do this, and then you're in a good position to then do this and do this. You can't just come straight in. But yeah, going back to your original one, I think the motivation has to be that powerful that when they do have those opportunities of outs, is they just don't look at them. They just have to look forward. For me, when we did our bike ride, we had a documentary team, and they were like, this guy is showing no emotion. He's just literally hitting his target. I was very stoic in everything I did. I had my target for the day and I hit it. But actually, I was never under pressure from the charities. I was never under pressure from the sponsors. My pressure was, I told the world that the UK Special Forces ethos was the unrelenting pursuit of excellence. And so I'd put myself under self-inducing pressure. I set my goal as the world records because I had to have an objective to hit. But for me, I said to him, how does it look to the world if I don't complete this challenge? And I've told the world that the ethos is the unrelenting pursuit of excellence. So for me, it was the fact that I could go back to the bar in Poole or in Hereford with the SAS and SBS and hold my head up high that I'd achieved what I said I was going to achieve. It wasn't any of those other factors. It was my own self-induced pressure. So that was my motivation, not so much everything else.
That's solid, man. I can relate with things that I do on the channel or publicly that I like. If there's something that I really want to do, this ruck in Normandy and things like that, like I Amazing. Put it out there, right? I just put it out there because I'm first of all, my income does depend on it.
Yeah.
So that's something. But I mean, I could still have an out. I could just shut the channel down tomorrow and decide that I just don't want to do it anymore. And that would be an out, but that's just simply not an option.
Yeah.
But also my value assignment for how people are motivated or aspire to be like me in certain ways, I hold very high.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a good thing in some cases, and it's also detrimental in some things because maybe it could be perceived as being a people pleaser, things like that. But I just understand the value assignment that people might hold what I talk about. So when I say I'm going to do something, or I need to look a certain way, or I need to perform a certain way, there's not many people that can really understand it other than myself, that this is something that I hold in high value. So you're damn right that I'm not going to miss the gym. Yeah. I'm not going to misstep on my diet where I give myself slack, but I'm not going to misstep on my diet in certain ways because I know that I'm a motivator for a lot of people. And that's a high value assignment for me. So I think when it comes down to it, it really is just being able to put one foot in front of the other, know what holds stock for you, and believing in yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, one point, a great point you just touched on then is, for me, I hear other people doing challenges and I'm like, well, have you set a date? Have you told everyone you're doing it? And they're like, oh, no, not yet. So because I think once you then tell the world that you're going to do it, that is your motivator. Like, right, I need to now do it. I've told them I'm going to do this. But also when you tell the people that you're doing it, you'll be surprised at how many people will then support you.
Yeah.
If you keep it to yourself, people don't know what you're doing. And if you went rucking, I'm like, well, what are you up to? And I'm like, oh, nothing. But you tell me you're doing Normandy, I'm like, yeah, let's go rucking.
If it's not on the gram, it didn't happen.
Yeah,
man.
yeah, exactly. A lot of my friends, we used to have some mad ideas in the bar, drunk at night, and then regret it the next day. Like, remember you said you were going to do the London Marathon? Oh, did I?
Yeah, you said it.
With a ruck. With a ruck. So I think also putting it out there. People are nervous to put it out there because they feel like, well, what if I don't do it? But you'll be surprised about the support that you get as well and where it comes from.
Amen, man. Well, where can everyone find you, brother?
So I'm on social media on Dean Stott, Facebook, Instagram, and deanstott.com on my website.
Right on, brother. Thanks, man.
Thank you very much.